Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is November 22nd. It is Wednesday evening. It's about 8 p.m. Where I am sitting. See here, we get a couple of live people in here. This is Facebook Live. This is the second time we're doing this answer bar. And we're going to talk about Fusion 360. This is primarily for new users, so absolute beginners. We're going to do this fairly easy. Just any questions you have as we are modeling things up on the screen, just put them in your question area, and we'll make sure that I will do my best to answer any questions I can. Again, this is going to be for new users, so I'm not going to get into too advanced topics. But at the same time, there is no time limit on this one. We'll just kind of like go until we are done modeling and till you are done if you have any questions or comments. So let me get my my Fusion 360 up here. So I like to kind of like, if I can, give you an idea about where we are headed tonight. So we're gonna model up this old-fashioned type of key kind of thing here. That was what I was kind of like planning on. Could be an interesting one. I can see we got Isaac here. Hello, Isaac. Hey, Pete. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time to join here on a Wednesday evening. So cheers to you. So we're gonna start from scratch, and again, any questions are more than welcome. This is again your opportunity to literally just ask a question. We'll stop whatever we're doing in here and answer them. So a little bit different than the YouTube format, where I kind of like on the live streams there, I kind of like go through something I want to show, and then in the end I normally go into the live stream. So this is what we're gonna model up. So let's get out of this. Just gonna hit the little X up here to kind of like clear all that out. So I'm using factory settings right out of the gate here. There's a couple of changes that I like to do, and one of them is to go up to the view cube up here in the upper right here, and right click and change perspective with ortho faces on. What that will do is that when we are looking at the part in an angle, it will look perspective, so like you will see kind of like a depth of field. But when we are actually sketching, we're kind of like looking at it straight on without that depth of field. It makes it a little bit easier. So that's normally one change I do. So right click up on the view cube, perspective with auto faces. The other thing I like to do is I like to go down to the bottom of the screen here and click on the grid settings, and I like to turn off layout grid. So I kind of like just get that screen here. Another thing that many times people get a little bit confused about down here is the setting next to it, kind of like the display settings. And in here in the visual style, make sure you have shaded with visible edges turned on. So that's just maybe a little thing to just look at. All right, I can see we got Ben here. Thank you for joining, Ben. Happy Thanksgiving to you tomorrow too. We got Chris. Thank you guys, really appreciate it. David, great to see you here, man. So yes, so we're gonna sketch up or draw up this key. And by the way, I say it again. Any questions you have as we're going along here, just put them in the comment area, and we kind of like try to address any questions that you have. This is your opportunity. You're among friends, and people's level of fusion is not really important. We got Darren in here too. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Isaac. So one of the things I wanted to point out here, last Wednesday, we did another absolute beginner one. So if you missed that one and you're kind of like just trying to get your feet on the ground and stable with Fusion 360, definitely also check that video out. One of the things I was talking about was we always sketch on either a face or a plane. Now, we don't have any faces on the screen yet because we haven't modeled anything yet. We have this light bulb you can hit up here that can turn on the origin, and I prefer to do that. And here you have 3 different planes that you can sketch on. So we always start with that 2D sketch and extrude it out in space. But there is actually also a couple of other tools inside of Fusion. If you hit the drop down, you will see that there is some predefined options in here that can kind of help you getting faster a little bit, getting going a little bit faster. So for this key handle, I'm going to use the torus here. So I'm going to click on that. Now when I click on that, pay attention to next to your cursor. It actually tells you right there what it's looking for. So it says select a plane or a planar face. Now we don't have a face, we just talked about that, but we have a plane. So you can select one of these over here depending on what you prefer, and it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to select what would be the front plane here, and you can look here and see the front view over here, and you can look right up on this plane here. So if I click on here, it actually goes into a sketch. Now again, look next to my cursor. It says place a center point. So I'm going to go down and make sure that I hit right down at the origin right down here. I'm just going to click there and draw out, and you will see that I kind of like get a circle. Okay, so I'm going to make this one 50 millimeters. You can actually just type it right in. So 50 millimeters, and I am going to hit OK. And as soon as I do that, you will see that we do get the torus. We get kind of thickness to it, and you will actually see that we have a couple of different options over here in the menu. And you can actually click like the little information button down here and get some more information, which can be really helpful. Now I'm going to leave it the diameter at 10 and the inner diameter, as we just set, to 50, and go ahead and just hit OK to that. So with that, we have actually created our first solid. We can see down in the feature tree down here that we have kind of like that torus, and you can spin the model around. If you hold down the shift key on your keyboard and the middle mouse button, you can see that we can spin it around. So middle mouse button and the shift key, we can kind of like roll around. We can kind of like see that ring we just created. What's going to be the handle of this kind of like old time key here? I see we got a couple of more people in here. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to join the live stream here on a Wednesday evening in Western New York. So the reason that I started with the circle, besides showing you that these tools are in here, is that when you're starting a new design, many times it can be hard to figure out where you should start on your design. When you're looking at your part, you know where you're going to end up. You know you want to end up with that full-blown part there. But where to start? I like to break the part down into sections. So in this case here, with the key, there's kind of like the handle, what we just kind of did. There is, of course, the kind of the locking mechanism, and then there's a connection rod between these two. So if you think about your design and try to break it down into pieces, then it's easier to start with one of those pieces and kind of like get something on the screen, and then you can kind of like work from there on. All right, so let's move on here now. So like I said before, we either sketch on a face or a plane. Now we still really don't have a plane to sketch on here, and I think what I want to create is like that connection rod between the locking mechanism and the handle here. A tool that you should get familiar with is the offset plane up here. So we have these by default, these 3 planes, but what we can do is we can actually, if you hit the drop down, you will see we get an option in here to create different types of planes. So the offset plane up here is pretty neat. So you click on offset plane, and you will see down here that it kind of like gives you what it's looking for. I can just kind of like minimize that if you want to. But what it's looking for is a plane to offset from. So if I select this plane here, I get a little arrow. I can drag with my cursor left drag out kind of like a plane. I'm going to make this 100 millimeters. So what I just did, and you can see we get the feature down here in the tree, is I kind of like now have created my own little plane over here that I can now sketch on. So I'm going to go up here and say I want to create a new sketch. I'm going to click on the sketch and icon up here, and then I'm going to move over and click on the plane we just created. You will see that the software automatically kind of like turns us normal to, and if I zoom in a little by rolling the middle mouse button, you can see that you kind of like get the origin in there. We can start sketching on that. Now I'm going to sketch a circle, and I'm a huge fan of the shortcut keys there is inside of Fusion. So for circle, we're going to hit C. So C for circle. And you can see again, next to my cursor, you will get notified what the software is looking for. So place the center. So I'm just going to go over here, hover over that origin point, left click and drag out, and you will see that I now get a circle here. Now I'm going to type in 10 and make it the same diameter as our torus or our ring was. And as soon as I do that, you will see that we kind of get that circle, and then it turns black. What means that the circle is fully defined, right? We always need to fully define our sketches, and the reason it's fully defined is because we specified the starting point. It's locked into the origin, and we gave it a diameter. Now, if I again hold down Shift and the middle mouse button and roll over, you will see that that ring is sitting out where we created that construction plane before. So now that circle is sitting out there in space. Now, to actually create a solid from this, I'm going to hit Q for press pull. I'm going to select inside of the circle here, and we get another arrow, what means that we can start dragging things. Now, of course, I can drag this direction, and we kind of like just creating another solid. Of course, also drag in the other direction. Now, an interesting thing you will see is that as soon as I intersect with the ring, you will see that things changes color to red. So as soon as Fusion looks at two intersecting bodies colliding like this, it looks at it as a cut. Okay? And I don't want that. I want this one here to actually come up and be flush with the ring. So one of the things I think many people kind of oversees when they're starting out learning Fusion is a lot of the options that is over in the menus over here. And I think, honestly, I just think it's a natural thing. You're trying to get something on the screen. You're trying to get to your end goal, and you kind of like have a tendency to rush a little bit. If you want to, one of the advices I have is try to slow down a little bit when you're modeling. Almost to the point where it's a little uncomfortable, but like look around and see some of the different options that actually are appearing in some of these menus as you're working along. So in here, in the drop down, you will actually see that there is an extent that has a distance on it, and that correlates with that distance you see right there, and also you see over here. But this is actually a drop down, and there's other options in here. So one of the things that is in here is to object. So if I select that one, now you kind of see that my solid goes away, but it's looking for something to go up to. And if I select that ring, you will see that the solid goes right up to that ring. And if I roll the middle mouse button, hold down the Shift and middle mouse button, you can see that it makes a perfect blend up to that ring. So we kind of like connected these two pieces together. So I hope that this is kind of like useful. Again, if you have any questions, more than welcome to throw them in the live stream in there in the question area. We'll definitely make sure that we answer any questions we're going along. I can see we got Chai. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. And we got Noah. I can't say your last name, man, from Morocco, but that's cool, from Morocco. So yeah, if you have any questions about Fusion, kind of like beginner level, just throw them in there and we'll answer them as we go. All right. Another thing that we might want to do is we now have kind of like we created the handle, we created that connection, is we might want to add like some kind of a blend or fillet between over here. If you go to the modify drop down, be aware that there is a lot of great options in here. One of them is a fillets. So we can select this fillet, and you will see over here it's looking for edges. So we can select these two edges right here, and we can either type in the dimension. We can also kind of like start dragging out here, what can be a little bit, you know, hard to kind of like maybe control. But if we're making like a 3mm fillet, that might look pretty good. And hit enter. Now notice when we are looking in here that you know, the fillet might look a little strange because you have those edges, visible edges on. It makes modeling in CAD a little bit easier, but of course, remember in real life, if we went down back to the display options, back to and just turned it from visible edges only to just shaded, that would look a little bit more real like that. But again, most people when they are actually modeling in CAD will have the shaded with visible edges on, so we can kind of see it here. All right, I can see we got Misha here. I think this just taught me how to, hey man, that's cool. Yeah, any type of questions, just throw them in there, man. Any comments are absolutely welcome. So we kind of like, you'll see down in the history tree down here that we kind of have the different features down here, and you can actually grab down here and you can roll back. So we can actually go all the way back to our ring. Then we created this offset plane. Now you can't see the offset plane. If I hover over it, you can kind of see the shadow, but it also have a folder up here where we can actually kind of turn it on and off. So that was that plane we created. Then we created a sketch that then became this rod where we connected those two objects together, and we added that fillet to fit this together. Now let's kind of like put the key on the end here. One of the things that you need to know is, again, we have these planes we can sketch on, but when you're looking at these planes as they are here on the screen, they look fairly small, but it doesn't really matter. Think of them as kind of like being infinitive size. They're just represented smaller. So if I want to sketch something over here, I can absolutely start the sketch on this plane. So I'm going to say I want to create a new sketch, and I'm going to select this plane right here, and you will see that the part kind of like rotates around here. Now I showed you that if you roll the middle mouse button in and out, you're kind of like zooming in and out, and I showed you how hold down shift the middle mouse button, we can kind of like rotate the part around. Now let me just go back to being flat looking at it. You can click up here on the view cube also, and you can move them up here. Now the middle mouse button by itself will pan. So if you don't hold shift down, you can kind of like pan around, makes it a little bit easier. All right, so to make the bottom end of the key, I'm just gonna sketch up a rectangle, but I wanna show you a little thing here, because this is a round piece, right? Like this is round. Now, when I'm looking from this side here, I can't really pick up this edge, intersection edge point right here. But there's actually a tool that can help you do that. And that's a projecting tool. What that means is that we can project an edge from the solid into the sketch that we're working on right now. So if you're looking here, you will see that we have the sketch palette open that tells us we're inside of a sketch, and we can actually get this edge over so we can use it. Hit P for project. I hit that. Opens up another menu here. Just drag over. And I can select this edge. When I select this edge, you will see that the endpoints kind of like appear. So now I have something to attach it to, kind of like this corner here. So now I'm going to go up and select the 2-point rectangle and click the edge here, and I can drag out kind of like this rectangle right here. I can place that, and I can then give it some dimensions, because we always want to put some dimensions on it so it cannot just, we can't do this. We got to kind of like lock it down. So I'm going to hit D for dimension, And I'm going to put a dimension right here, and I'm going to make it 20, what it defaults to. And over here, click on this edge, and let's make it 15 maybe. Okay. So now we have that sketch. Now let me just, again, hold shift down and rotate around so you can see how that sketch is sitting right there on the inner section point right there. Now I wanted to show you something, because if I go in to extrude this now into 3D space, so hit Q for extrude, just like this, and I start dragging on the arrow, you will see something interesting right here. And that is that I'm only connected right at that edge and not on top of that. So like if we're looking, you see how we don't have any material up here. That would make it a very, like it really can't attach, right? There'd be no bearing right there. So the reason I wanted to show you this is that this actually not maybe the best way to do this. Let me go back. So up here you have an undo button. So if I undo, you will see how we're kind of like going back each step here. So there was the rectangle we placed. Now the rectangle is gone. Now you'll see this line here. Let me undo one more time. Now that line is gone. So now we kind of like went backwards. So you can go backwards and forward up here. Now instead of sketching this rectangle starting right down here on the edge and going out, I can actually start it right in the center of this round piece. So if I do that instead, I'm going to place this one, hit enter. We got the 25. Let me hit D for dimension, and let's make this one again 15 like we did before. You will see now when I extrude this out, well, actually, it goes into a cut because, as I told you before, when we did the rod into the part, as soon as two kind of like intersecting each other, like we're doing here with the sketches, it wonders if it's a cut. But again, that's just another drop down over here. If you go from cut to join, then you will now see that we kind of like get that solid, and it now looks a lot more like a key would. Now another thing you need to be aware of is that right now I'm only pulling kind of like in one direction over here, right? You can actually in direction over here go either to two sides or in this case symmetry, and now I'm actually pulling in both direction with one arrow. So I hope this was not too confusing, but my point was that I actually on purpose made the rectangle intersect with the round bar. Let me just hit OK, and we can kind of like now see how we got that key shape up there. So now we got a nicer blend between the two. All right. So, David, are you asking a question? I'm not sure if that's what you put in there. Let me know. All right, so we're almost done with the key here. Now, just to make a couple of more changes to the key, I'm going to create a couple of more sketches. So I'm actually going to go up and create a new sketch up here, and I can actually start sketching on this face. Right now I got planar faces. I don't have to create planes or anything. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to use that corner 2-point rectangle again, and I'm just going to cut a section up here so you can see kind of like how we get the rectangle. So let's make this one maybe 8 long, and D for dimension. Select this edge here, and we could make it maybe 15. So now we have this sketch sitting again on that face there. I'm going to hit Q, and then I'm going to cut through here, this way here. Now, many times when we are doing this kind of cut, it's tempting to just drag that handle out just like that. So it's kind of like floating out there in space. But it's actually better practice, instead of just leaving this one out at some random number, to go over and instead of having distance, just say all. So it will just cut through every single solid there is. And that works here. And I'm going to show you in a second why it doesn't. So I'm going to hit OK. And you will see that now we kind of like have that notched out there. All right. So David, I'm not quite sure what you're asking. If I'm going to make an update to this model, well, we definitely could. We can definitely go ahead and make an update to the key here. Now, so with this, I'm going to create another sketch over here. So I'm going to go up and say create sketch. And I'm going to show you why all is not always great. So I'm going to select here. Now we're looking from this end again. And let me sketch another 2-point rectangle. We're going to use that one a lot tonight. And I'm just going to sketch something like this here. Hit D for dimension. You should always fully define it. Let's make it 3. Let's make it 8. And you will see that it's still blue on the ends. And that's actually because that we haven't defined it the vertical way. So let me hit another dimension here to here. And let's just make that 5. So now you will see that the whole sketch turns black, what tells us that it's fully defined. Now, if I go in now and do a cut, again, just like we did on the other side, so Q, hit this area and drag the arrow through, looks pretty good. But you will see what happens when I say through all now. It's actually going to go through the handle. And I don't really want that. But at the same time, I don't like to use distance and just have this value sitting right there. We can actually use that object again as we used before, but then just select the backside of that face we want, just like that. And hit OK. And now we kind of like got that key layout just like that there. All right. So with this, the last thing I want to go in and do to this one here is maybe add a hole right in the center here. So I'm really just going to follow the same procedure that I've been doing up to this point. I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to select this face here. And then I can just hit C, just like we did before. Make sure we place it right on that origin. Left click and drag out. And let's make that 4 millimeters. That's fully defined. Shift middle mouse button, rotate. And we can do a Q. And then we can drag a hole in here. Now this hole normally don't go all the way through. So here it's fine to kind of put a distance in. So let's put -10 and kind of end that there. Now, a couple of small things we maybe want to do while we add this is to add a couple more fillets and maybe also some small chamfers. So again, the fillet tool was sitting up here on the fillet, and we can select these 2 edges right here, and we can put a little fillet in. Here, make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, might be good too. And we can also put chamfers on it, so kind of like breaking the edges on it. So we can click the chamfer tool, and you will see that it kind of like, as I'm hovering over, it kind of like show the edges here, and I can go in and kind of select each of these different edges. Maybe give it just, I don't know, 0.5 maybe, 0.25. And you could, of course, go around and do that everywhere on the model. Actually, if I right-click out here in space, I can repeat a command. So the latest command I had on here. So now I can actually go ahead and I can select more kind of like edges in here that I maybe want to break. So let's just select a couple more edges around here. You can select as many as you want. You might run into a intersection problem where I can't solve it, but in this case here, it looks pretty good. Go ahead and see how many of them we can add in here, and again maybe at 0.25. And it looks like it did on all of them. So kind of like breaking the edges for what we need. Oh, we missed one right down there. We could actually now just go in and edit feature, and then you would have to select them. Sadly, you have to select them all again, or you could just, of course, be lazy and right click. Oh, go up and hit the chamfer tool again and just select that one edge that I missed. Okay. So that kind of takes us to the end of the key. Now, a couple of things I want to show you. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and turn that origin off again. So we can go in here and turn the origin off. So now we can't see that. And one of the things that I like to do is actually change the kind of appearance of this part. So if we right click and click appearances, you get the appearance dialog showing up in here. And there's a lot of different things you can look at in here. Now, if I click on metal, you'll see there's aluminum, brass, bronze, chrome. There's all different kinds of things. Go into bronze, and you can scroll down, and you can see that there's all different kinds of different ones in there. You could go in and you could do brass. That was what I did before. And be aware of that there is any one of these that is gray that has an arrow next to it means that you can download it from the web. All the ones that is white means that they were already installed. But if some of them are not, because many times people don't use all of them. So for example, this brass old here, if you click that little arrow here, it will actually download that to my workstation right now, and it will turn white. Now you see it's white. And I can just drag this up here on the other one and overwrite it, and you will now see, if I close it, that we now kind of like added that little patina to it, so it looks a little bit old. And of course, this space, one of the things we can do inside of Fusion is we can go in and we can actually render it. Now, before I do that though, let's just talk a little bit about what David put in regards to making changes. So I talked about before how this whole tree here kind of like is how the part is made. It was roll all the way back to the beginning, and we can kind of like take it like we did before. Now, one of the things where we kind of like decided the length of this, and what controlled the length of this round bar was that first plane we created, right? That was what we sketched on. If I go in right now and I right click on it and say edit, and I, for example, drag it out to 130 and hit OK, you will see that my key just became 130 long. So you can change things in here and things will update, right? So I can go ahead and edit it. We can also make it the shortest key in the world. So you have kind of this this control in here to kind of like create this. And then of course that also goes, if I go over and I right click on the torus, that was the first feature we created, we could actually, you know, make it bigger, make it smaller, and control that like that. All right, good stuff, I hope. Any questions, just throw them in there. Now, just gotta have a sip of my beer here. It's Wednesday evening. It's 8:36 here, so beer is allowed. Now, one thing, because we're only like on a 30-minute here, and I want to give you an opportunity. If you have any questions, just throw them in there. That is why I'm here. Another space we have that you should know about is you have the render space in here. What could be kind of fun with kind of like this kind of model in here. Now, when you set up the render space, and I did a live stream on YouTube about this, it can be good to maybe just kind of like explore that a little bit. But really what you can do in here if you want to play around with it is we can first of all play with the appearances. Now, so I'm just going to work from the left to the right here, like we were reading. So if we click here, then you will see that we get back to this appearances where I before dragged that part in. The next one would actually give us a scene setup. So here we can actually play around with the scene. So right now you will see that we kind of like have this gray background, and that's what you're kind of seeing here with a solid background. We can click right here and we can actually go in and we could completely change the background to something else. We wanted that. You can also hit the drop down here and change to another environment. And when you change it to the environment, you can actually go into the event environment library in here, and you actually get all different kinds of options in here where you can kind of like place it in an environment. So we can drag this environment out here, let it update, and you would actually see that now it's kind of like sitting on a plaza background here. If I hold down Shift and middle mouse button, you can kind of like see we are on an I don't know, some king's castle. But actually this key might fit very well in there. So in the environment, you can play around with those things. You can play around with all the different aspects, radio, depth of field, and all these different settings in here. And you can actually also in here turn on what is called in-canvas rendering. Now my live stream might just slow down a little bit while I'm doing this, but what it's actually going to do is it's going to create a pixelated image here of the key and give you something that looks very close to photorealistic. Now this in-canvas renderer is just kind of a preview. So this is where you can kind of like set up all your lighting, whatever you want, backgrounds, and all that different stuff. When it comes to the final render, we go over here and click on the little watering can over here. We need to save it first. Let's just save it. When we click on this one over here, come on, just gonna wait for the cloud. There we go. Now we get this dialog where we can actually we can save it out as a PNG, JPEG, or whatever you kind of like, what you want in here. You can choose if you want to do it locally on your computer, if you want to do the processing there, or if you will do it out in the cloud. So kind of interesting to play a little bit around with in this kind of environment. What do you think, guys? Not bad for a Wednesday evening, I hope. You let me know if this is useful. This is Wednesday evenings around 8. Really just trying to do something for beginners, kind of like just dialing it back a little bit, trying to add a little bit more value to your use of Fusion. So this is definitely the place to just come and fire any questions. All right, I can see here that Robert jumped in. Small decorative rings tangent to the shaft and main ring. Oh, so kind of like adding something that is tangent to that. Well, in this case here, because I use that torus, I might have to actually think a little bit about that. What you can do is up in the assemble up here, there is something called contact sets. So if I, for example, let's just test it out. So if I go up here to torus and I create another one, a little bit smaller, okay. Right now, I probably actually have to do it as a component. So let's just do that. So we're going to create these into components now. Two different components. So now these can move around. So I'm going to this was the first one, I'm just going to ground it so it can't move. So right now these can kind of like move into one another. One way to do this I mean, you could of course create some sketch geometry and then just do the calculation, you know, where there will be tangent. But one thing is you can do contact sets. So I can create a contact sets between these two, just like that. And now you will see that it will not penetrate that ring. I have used that a couple of times with building like CNC fixtures or something like that. Then you can do that. You can kind of like drag it up till it touches. No, I'm not doing it right now. Maybe because I moved it around. Contact within sets. Okay. All bodies contact. Okay, I just did it before, huh? Let's go back again. Undo, undo. I'm doing Control Z just to go back here. Let's try that one more time. So, enable contact sets between this and this. There we go. So then I will drag it in so it's like where I want it, and then you could actually fix it right there. I hope that kind of like makes sense, Robert. Sorry, Robbed, not Robert. So that's one way you can do that. Bryce is asking, projecting the plane earlier filled in a blind spot for me. Well, so what happens is, and that's a little tricky to know about. Let's just go back to the original area down here. When you create a plane, let's create an offset plane from anywhere. We could actually offset from a face also. Create this plane here. You will see that the plane is visible, and it's actually sitting over here on the left, over here. But as soon as you start sketching on it, so let's just sketch something, a rectangle, and let's extrude that out. As soon as you do this, the plane disappears on the screen, but it is actually sitting in here. It just turns the light bulb off. So the planes are still here. You might just have to go over here and turn them on and off if you need to see them. Another thing while we're in here, hey, Paul, good afternoon, good evening. Another thing that you should maybe know about is that if we, for example, let's open a new part, and we create a sketch. And if I go in and I create two rectangles in one sketch, I can hit Q for extrude them out. If I only extrude one and hit OK, you see the other one disappeared. But it's actually still there. It's just that Fusion turns off the sketch. Now you can hit the light bulb and you can see it again. And now I can actually hit Q again, select that one, and move that rectangle out. Now that is actually a setting, as David says here. In settings, or in preferences, you're going to click your name, preferences, and you go into general, I believe. Is it general or is it design? Design, auto hide sketch on feature creation. That's actually a fairly new addition in there, so you can actually turn that on and off. If you have it off, that means that now, if we go back, we have draw the two rectangles. I hit Q, pull one out. Now you will see that the other one will not go away because I have that unchecked. In preferences, under design, this one here unchecked. So that's an option. Whatever you do, if you do a lot of this kind of stuff, that can definitely be useful. All right. Any other questions while we are at it here? As we're working our way through this little old key here. I'm just doing the Control Z. It does the same thing as up here. to kind of like work our way through here. I don't know. You let me know. Anything else? I surely appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are around the world, to join in on these live streams. Again, these here are trying to be a little bit more relaxed than the ones that we do on YouTube. And again, if you have any questions, you are absolutely more than welcome to throw in your 2 cents. You see David here talking about the fast rendering options in there. Yeah, so there's different settings you can do within the rendering space on how fast you want to do it. If you have cloud credits, as everybody does have cloud credits, you can set it on the best, and you can it can be running up in the cloud doing all the processing while you are working on something else. All right, friends, I really appreciate it. 46 minutes here. I'm going to end this Wednesday live stream. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in the US, so if you are following on the YouTube live stream also, there will be no live streams tomorrow or Friday. But we'll be back again Monday on YouTube, the live streams, and next Wednesday around 8 o'clock back here on Facebook. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome Thanksgiving, and take care. Thank you.